It's great to welcome Michael Cohen back to the program. Of course, the former personal attorney to Donald Trump, host of the Mea Culpa podcast, and author of the book Revenge: How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics, a claim that he is now making, Michael, against the current Department of Justice, that it is being weaponized against him and he's a victim and it's all a big conspiracy and so on and so forth. Can you just address, let's take that head on as if maybe it were true.
Can
Is
we just can we start with the word irony?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
does
It's
that not
ironic, but also, is there any evidence that Georgia potentially, the New York DA, Jack Smith, is there any evidence that these legal instruments and actors are in any way coordinating or working together here, particularly at the direction of Joe Biden?
I mean, that's certainly a rhetorical question because the answer is an emphatic no. It's complete and utter bullshit. And it's basically part of the GOP Donald Trump MAGA spin. I mean, there is no evidence whatsoever that Joe Biden has any. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it is a Republican that was initially, for example, looking at Biden and then turned around and said that there was nothing there. And on top of that, we're now sitting with, you know, three indictments, soon to be five, based upon not somebody's whim, like what Donald Trump did, using Bill Barr as his bloviated attorney general weaponizer. Instead, we're looking at facts. Do we not know? Have we not seen? Did we not see with our own eyes January 6th, the insurrection? Did we not hear with our own ears the words coming out of Donald's mouth? How about all of the other stuff? Did we not see the documents demanding that Donald return from Mar-a-Lago the documents that he improperly possessed? The answer to all of this and more is yes. Is it not Donald who directed me to go ahead and to make, the deal with Stormy Daniels to pay, to make the hush money payment? The answer is yes. I mean, what fact is he missing that the rest of us aren't? Well, when I say the rest of us, I'm talking about those who actually want to know the truth, not those that are so engrossed into the cult of Donald Trump that they refuse to look at the facts and they refuse to, to read anything that doesn't comport to the nonsense that they want.
So there are some legal experts who, in looking at the three indictments so far, New York hush money, classified documents federal case, the new 2020 indictment for which Trump is going to be appearing in court today. Even though this latest one is only 4 counts, there are legal opinions that this is the most serious and potentially the one most likely to lead to prison time, at least in a hypothetical sense. Do you agree with that assessment or disagree?
I disagree. In fact, I think every single one of these indictments will end up resulting in a criminal conviction. You know, I kind of listen to the same pundits that you do, and
Yep.
they want to, prognosticate which one is the most significant. Let me be very clear on something, right? This is not a contest of which illegal act that the guy committed that should end up getting, first string. This isn't a horse race where, you're going for the trifecta. Well, yeah, look, I will be the first one to acknowledge, which I have, that seditious conspiracy is by far the most grotesque act whatsoever. Then you have the retention of the classified documents, and they're not even talking about the dissemination of these classified documents. They haven't even gotten to that one yet. But that certainly is more significant, or it's an uglier crime than the crime of the hush money payment and the business record violation. But that doesn't mean that the hush money payment or the criminal, the bank, the business document crime is not a crime in and of itself as well. It is. And I promise you, David, and I mean this, if it was you, like it was me, you would have already been indicted, prosecuted, charged, and doing time for it.
Mm.
Donald Trump should not be, given any special benefit above anybody else. We have one set of laws. At least that's the bullshit that people tell us all the time. In fact, what it appears is that there might be actually a two-tier legal system, and that doesn't work for democracy.
Can you talk a little bit about the significance or the point of the unindicted co-conspirators listed in this latest indictment, some of whom have been identified as Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and others? What is the purpose of that? What is the meaning of an unindicted co-conspirator?
Well, what you have is you have people who obviously Jack Smith and the investigators have determined were part of this this scheme, and so they are at this moment unindicted co-conspirators. What I found unusual, and you're right, it's Rudy Giuliani. You also have Sidney release the Kraken Powell. You have Eastman. You have Jeffrey Clark, and then you have this guy Cheesebro. My understanding is that all five of them are actually lawyers. This to me was very interesting. Why? Because it comports with exactly what Donald is out there saying, that he did everything correctly and that he did it after consultation with counsel.
Right.
So why is this relevant? Because I think Jack Smith, with the brilliant writing on this indictment, has made it crystal clear to these five, and who the sixth is. You know, there's a lot of speculation that it's Boris Epstein. I cannot confirm or deny that, who was also a lawyer, which would also be quite interesting. But what it basically shows is that Donald has already decided that the defense that one of the defenses that he will put forth is the defense of counsel, that he did this under the advice of counsel. So for those unindicted co-conspirators who now know exactly who they are based upon the writing of the indictment, now is probably a really good time for them to have their lawyers reach out to Jack Smith and his investigators to get in, to meet with them, and to basically tell the truth and to spill the beans. Because if not, I promise you, Donald Trump will be throwing them under the bus the same way that he did to me, because Donald doesn't care about any of them. He will do what is necessary to save himself. And the funny thing is, in his whacked out mind, he thinks that they should fall on the sword because that is what is necessary to save the king. Now, if I could bring up one additional thing about the indictment that I think, David, you and your listeners will find very interesting, is not so much who Jack Smith has included as these unindicted co-conspirators, but I think the real question is, who is not included in this indictment? So, for example, Mark Meadows. We all know that Mark Meadows was on top of Donald 24/7. I mean, he was basically his shadow. So I found it odd that he is not mentioned and he is not one of the unindicted co-conspirators in this case. Another person that I find unusual not to be included was the Secretary of Everything himself, Jared Kushner. We all know that Jared was involved in every single thing. So how is it possible that these two individuals are not included in the indictment as unnamed co-conspirators? And my position, and again, simply my position, that they have already been cooperating with Jack Smith in this investigation.
Right.
And I think it would make a lot of sense in terms of who knew that the documents were where they were, the type of documents, who was sharing this information with Jack Smith and prosecutors all along.
So along those lines, we played a clip this earlier in today's show from CNN last night where Caitlin Collins asked William Barr, Trump's former attorney general, have you sat down with Jack Smith? And he said, I'm not going to answer that. And he just sat there silently, not saying anything. Many are assuming If the answer was no, he would have just said, oh, no, I haven't had any involvement with that. And thus, the answer must be yes, that William Barr sat down with Jack Smith. Is that a reasonable assumption, or is that not necessarily the case?
Not necessarily the case. I think what he was trying to do is to show that he's going to hold on to attorney-client privilege, even if it's something that would not remain as attorney-client privilege based upon the crime fraud exception rule. But the problem that I have with Bill Barr, the problem that I have with many who are having him come on their programs,
Yep.
Bill Barr was the guy, he was the fixer, right, during the time that he became the attorney general. He is the guy that Donald Trump used as attorney general to weaponize the Department of Justice. All of a sudden now, Bill Barr is what? Being invited back into polite society to talk about Donald Trump as if he wasn't responsible for so much of the stuff that we are dealing with today. How about the unconstitutional remand of a United States citizen back to prison because he refused to waive his First Amendment constitutional right? I want your listeners to also to think about that for a second. How grotesque that is as a concept, that you could be thrown in jail because you refuse to waive your First Amendment constitutional right. If in fact something like that exists and a president or anyone is capable of doing that to you, you don't have a democracy. And that's exactly what Bill Barr and Donald Trump did to me, right? And obviously, you know that there's a lawsuit that I have right now. It's on appeal, Michael Cohen versus United States of America,
Yep.
Donald Trump, Bill Barr, et al. And I don't think people fully understand just how dangerous that is as a practice, because that's the exact sort of thing that you will see in Russia. It's the same thing that you'll see in Saudi Arabia, in North Korea, and in other autocracies. And that's, again, what Donald is trying to create here, an autocracy.
Michael, last thing I want to ask you about. In your heart of hearts, we've all seen the headlines, you know, if you get the maximum sentence for every single one of these 78 crimes, served consecutively, 561 years. Okay, we've all seen it. Trump's fundraising on it. As these things work their way through, charges are dropped, charges are consolidated, you don't get the maximum sentence. There's a question about what would happen with a former president anyway when it comes to sentencing. In your heart of hearts, does this guy see a single day of prison time?
So I believe that he will be convicted. I do not believe, and I want to be clear on this too, I don't want to see Donald Trump behind bars, not because he doesn't deserve it, not because I wouldn't like him to see what it's like behind bars, like what I experienced, including, for example, 51 days of solitary confinement. Again, thanks to the bloviated Bill Barr. All right, I would. However, I don't want to see Donald Trump in prison because let's not forget, for 4 years, Donald Trump met every day and was briefed on national security secrets. And Donald Trump will trade those secrets, right, for a bag of tuna or for a book of stamps. And I'm more concerned about national security and the safety of all Americans, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, for all Americans than I am about enjoying, hearing about Donald Trump having to take, a crap on a dirty toilet inside of a prison. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm more concerned, again, about our security than I am about Donald behind bars.
Michael Cohen, author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics. Check out the podcast, the Mea Culpa podcast. Michael, always appreciate your time and insights.
It's great to see you, David.